Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, and a big thank you to Stephanie in the US, Jamie in the UK, and Stefano in Italy. Now, all three of you are located thousands of miles apart, but you all have two things in common. One, you're all in lockdown at the moment, stuck staring at the same four walls, and you've all sent very similar emails in, where you've pretty much said that you're remaining sane during lockdown by learning yoga. And you wouldn't believe how similar your messages were. And it seems that the three of you have all said, I wanted to learn yoga for a long time, but hey, I never had the time. But now you've got the time, turn to the internet. There's so many video channels and websites out there, and you're putting aside 30 minutes a day to try and learn yoga during this downtime. So good for you guys. And remember, wherever you're listening to this show, let me know how you're turning lockdown into an opportunity to do something different. Whatever it is, I'd love to hear it. Share it on here. Maybe we can all learn a thing or two together during this crazy period of uncertainty. So remember, email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. Now, we have spoken to a few people recently whose businesses are struggling at the moment. But it's also important to keep that balance right and not just give you doom and gloom stories, but focus on some of those businesses that are thriving. And today's guest is one of those. His name is Alex Collmer, and he's the founder and CEO of a creative ad tech company called VidMob. And VidMob focuses on designing technology to make human creativity more scalable, accessible, and efficient, so it can enable brands to understand which creative attributes are actually driving performance. And it's built on a proprietary pipeline of machine learning services and data processing and integrated with social platform APIs. And their technology service, called Agile Creative Studio, provides precise creative insights that are immediately actionable. So today, Alex is going to share how he helps brands more intelligently use data and scale their mobile advertising creative. And since founding the company in 2015, he's raised over $45 million and counts many of the world's leading brands and agencies as their clients. Now, he is locked down in New York today, but he is one of the most positive, upbeat guys I've spoken to. And I want his positivity and optimism to infect all of us today, because I think that's what we need right now. So come and join me for a virtual conversation in New York with Alex Collmer. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Sure. I'm Alex Collmer, and I'm the founder and CEO of a company called VidMob.
Now, my understanding is that VidMob focuses on designing technology to make human creativity more scalable, accessible, and efficient, and ultimately enabling brands to understand which creative attributes are driving their performance. But there will be a lot of people tuning in, hearing about you for the first time. So enough from me. Can you set the scene and tell me a little bit more about what it is and what value it offers to your customers?
Sure. So I think in some ways it probably helps to almost step back and sort of set the stage for the challenges that marketers are going through. And then we can sort of discuss the solution that VidMob has tried to build. But so what's happening today is that we have kind of moved from an era where marketing communications was a lot simpler. You had sort of a single meaningful platform television, a single format, 30-second ad. Everything was shaped the same way. The audiences were all, fairly consistent. And that existed as sort of the way of working for literally decades. And what's happened today, obviously, is that while television still exists and is still very important for many communications, it's been augmented with everything that exists on the internet. So you have, Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat and Twitter and Pinterest and, all the various Google platforms, TikTok, Amazon, LinkedIn, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They all have different ad formats, in fact, most of them have multiple different ad formats. And the audiences in each of them are in totally different mindsets. So, someone who's, scrolling through a Facebook feed is really in a different mindset than someone who is looking through, Instagram stories or Snap stories or something like that. And so from a marketer perspective, the challenge of communicating to your audience, finding them communicating with, appropriate messages has just gotten exponentially more difficult. Now, their budgets haven't gotten exponentially bigger.
Yeah.
And so literally every marketer on the planet, from small businesses all the way up to the largest enterprise marketers in the world, are all struggling with this same basic challenge, which is just, how do I do more with less without sacrificing quality? And how do I use technology to get more leverage in my creative operations? And so VidMob sort of stepped up to that challenge. I had started a video game publisher with my good friend and longtime coworker, Jason Donnell. We ran that for a decade. We saw our own marketing start to struggle. And we felt very strongly that as the web moved from a text and image medium to one where video and ultimately more complex media types would predominate, I felt very strongly that technology would have to have a role in making creativity more scalable. But we didn't believe that it was going to be a pure technology solution. That you're going to have sort of magic algorithms that could create emotionally resonant stories and communicate, effectively sort of the uniqueness of a brand's message. We just didn't believe that. We felt like human creativity was going to remain an essential part of the communication exercise. And so our idea was, how do we build a tech platform that makes human creativity more scalable, as opposed to trying to replace it? And so that's ultimately what VidMob, is. We started out by building a marketplace of heavily curated, really high-end editors, animators, motion designers. And then what we saw was that we had to build a fairly robust system of workflow tools to manage the whole creative process, from brief building to moving terabytes of raw media to collaboration as the drafts came back to publishing onto the appropriate ad accounts. We had to build all of that workflow. And then as the scale of our business grew, we realized that there were a whole bunch of interesting things that we could do on the data side so that we could actually help brands make smarter creative. And today that's what VidMob has evolved into.
And you did mention there, a lot of businesses, they're not getting those extended budgets. And of course, those budgets are probably shrinking even further now, because every business is going through a period of uncertainty at the moment. And for example, I'm locked down here in the UK, and several thousand miles away, you're locked down in New York City talking to me today. So I've got to ask, how are you dealing with these challenges at the moment? Because I think it's a topic that every business leader is going through and looking to others to see how they're overcoming those challenges too.
Yeah, so the world that we were building for over the course of the last 5 years has definitely been accelerated in the midst of the coronavirus crisis. So at its root, VidMob is a platform to help remote teams collaborate, work productively together, and then with relative ease, push that content out to all the places that it needs to go. So it's think of it like an operating system for creativity. What we've seen happen now is that obviously, almost every marketer on the planet has moved to some form of work from home.
Yeah.
And, teams have been broken apart, and the sort of physical collaboration that still is a sort of a legacy of many decades of sort of pre-existing working habits has literally come to a screeching halt. At the same time, all new physical productions, shoots, canceled everywhere. So there is no new, newly shot content in really any marketer at this point. But at the same time, many brands are saying, well, in this time of need, it's more important than ever that I'm communicating to my customers. Whether if my services are an essential part of what's going to keep them going day to day, or just letting them know that our brand is here to support them, that communicating is still important. And so what we've seen is brands look for tools and platforms that can help them continue to create on a distributed basis, and find ways to reuse existing assets. So maybe they have things that they shot a month ago, or an ad that was working 2 weeks ago, or a year ago, but now the messaging is woefully inappropriate and needs to be adapted. Our whole platform is built on being able to use any kind of raw media, whether it's an existing television campaign, terabytes of B-roll from a shoot, or even just logo files and things like that. And then when you couple that with really talented, post-production personnel, they can work magic as long as they're directed. And so what we've sort of seen is that the need for our platform is actually dramatically accelerated in the last couple weeks, and it's something that we're really proud of, that we can help our customers continue even in a time of real challenge.
And it's great to hear a story like that, because we do hear so much doom and gloom at the moment. But I'd love to take you back to where it all began. I mean, it probably seems like a lifetime away now, but can I ask you to share the story behind how you founded VidMob and what put you on this platform and what got you where you are today?
Sure. Yeah, of course. So, I'm one of these people that was, I think, in many ways kind of born an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably more of a curse than a benefit, but it's just who I am. And so after my first couple of years at university, I actually dropped out. My folks were unimpressed with my grade accomplishments, and so I had to basically come up with the funds to pay my way through school. And so I think at age 19, I became an entrepreneur for the first time and had to figure out how to pay my way through college. And what I got a taste of then is really never left. So in 2006, I started a video game publishing company with now my co-founder, or one of the co-founders of VidMob, Jason. And we spent a decade kind of running that company, making big games with Def Jam and with Jimmie Johnson, the NASCAR champ, and through that experienced a couple of things, and I think this sort of started me down this path. But games, the process of building games, is really lives at the intersection of high-end technology and creativity in a way that is, in quite unique. And so over the years, I became fairly comfortable living in these two worlds. And I'm an engineer by background. I have a degree in structural engineering, but I'm also a creative. Like I write poetry and do things like that. And so I just started to think more and more about what was going to be required as we moved from a world where marketing was easier to one where it became more and more complicated. And I couldn't shake this feeling. And what ultimately ended up being most compelling to me was that you could see all of these points of sort of doom and gloom as it related to labor, right? Yeah. You had sort of AI, the rise of AI, the impact of technology broadly, globalization. All of these things were supposed to be like destroying jobs. And to me, I believe strongly that a big part of identity is rooted around your feeling of self-worth, and and your job is a big part of that. And what struck me was that if creativity was going to be sort of somewhat protected, one of the last areas that AI could go after, that if we could build this platform that made creativity more scalable, this could actually be one of the areas where there actually could be job growth. So in much the same way that the last 20, 30 years, if you knew how to write software, if you knew how to code, you had a pretty good chance of being able to get a high-paying job. And so it felt to me like going forward, storytelling and being able to, create effectively was going to be another one of those, sort of multi-decade opportunities. And we got really compelled by that. This idea that, all right, well, it's going to be hard, but if we could build a platform to help sort of open that up, that then we could sort of set the rules for that. We could ensure that instead of just trying to find the cheapest creator, we could actually set it so that it protected labor and was designed to create good jobs, not just jobs in general. And so from literally the beginning, I think my first pitch deck to VCs in 2014, slide one was, we're going to create 1 million jobs. And that has now morphed a great deal, but the mission underlying VidMob is the driver of it all. And I think that's sort of given us a real kind of strategic advantage from day one.
What a great story as well. I really hope that'll inspire other people listening throughout the world. But as this is a tech podcast, I'd love to take a look under the hood, as you guys would say over there in the US. So can you tell me more about how it's actually built on proprietary pipeline of machine learning services and data processing and integrated with social platform APIs? It sounds incredibly cool.
Yeah, so we'll sort of go through the history and how we got to where we are today. But so what we saw, was that marketers were starting to use this platform to actually scale their production, which was the goal of it. But then, so they'd end up with a couple hundred different sort of unique assets, and then the idea of having to sort of download them individually and then upload them into their Facebook ad manager, certainly made no sense at all. So we started plugging into the various platform ads APIs initially with the idea that it would just to make it easy to move media to the appropriate places. So, single button push, you publish it out to all the appropriate ad accounts. Once we did that, it also enabled us to receive performance information from those ad campaigns. So now we could both push the media that we created out into appropriate places, but also pull back the performance information. And so as the scale of our business grew, and we moved from being, sort of partners of Snapchat originally, and then Facebook and Instagram, and now today we're, probably the preferred creative partner of Snap, Facebook, Instagram, Google, Pinterest, Twitter, LinkedIn, Amazon, the sort of that whole ecosystem. And we work with many of the world's largest marketers. It sort of started to dawn on us that we actually have access to data at scale across the platforms that that very few entities have. Facebook understands their platform really well, but has no visibility into Snap, et cetera. And what sort of occurred to me was, if we could only understand the actual creative content, the actual creative attributes of that content, then we could do something really interesting. And so I was introduced to a woman named Jolene McGoldrick, who at the time was at Kantar Millward Brown, and she came over to start building out what we today sort of think of as our creative intelligence business. So at that time, computer vision was just starting to move from being able to only process imagery to being able to process video as well. And so if you think about a video itself, every video is really just a procession of static images. And so each of those frames has creative attributes. Think of it like the logos that are existing and where and when they're coming in, the words that are exhibited on screen, the words that are being spoken, the emotions that the actors are showing, which direction people are looking, what colors are predominant. If there's objects in the background, are those objects related to what's being spoken about or sort of dissonant? All of that is actually data. And we built systems using computer vision, optical character recognition, audio tools. We built a number of things that use, XY coordinates to look at gaze direction, and basically build enormous tag clouds of creative attributes. Then we can apply machine learning on top of that, where we couple it with the corresponding performance information, also on a frame-by-frame basis, and look for patterns. And when you look at any individual ad or any couple of ads, those patterns are sort of difficult to decipher. But when you look at it across millions of ads, you can start to see very clear signals. And so today, I would say, as much as a platform for scaling creative is, a big part of our business, an equal part of our business is helping brands decipher not which ads are working, because they know that, but why. Why is this ad working with this audience but not that one, et cetera? And so we create insights for our clients, insights that may exist at the platform level, so they're about Facebook or Google. They may exist at the category level, so it's about beverages or automotive or beauty, and then it may exist down all the way at the brand level, so it's about L'Oreal or Adidas or some Downy freshness. The key, though, is that those insights have a very specific reason for existing. They're not just an insight. If it was just an insight for information only purposes, it would be worthless. It's like, when you go to the doctor gives you an insight. He says, all right, well, you have this infection, or you're sick for this XYZ reasons. If that was all that happened at the doctor, you would literally never go to the doctor, right? Like, because then the second part is the doctor says, now here's a prescription, here's an action, and you get better. And so for us, the whole thing is like we give these insights and then we connect it back to our creative marketplace. So our clients can then react to that insight with new creative and actually improve their campaigns while they're running.
Wow.
And what we sort of say is that the decay curve, which has been sort of a standard of marketing for 100 years, that actually should be inverted now. That all of our clients should expect their ads to get better over time because we use data to improve them creatively.
Wow, that's a big change. And when I was researching you guys, I did look at the VidMob website and I quickly came across your technology service, Agile Creative Studio. Can you just expand on how that can actually provide those precise creative insights that are ultimately immediately actionable, aren't they? And that's what's the real cool thing of this.
Yeah, exactly. So the Agile Creative Studio is the core of our product.
Yeah.
And I think the way we think of it is it's essentially an operating system for a brand's creativity. Yes. So you think of a marketer, they're probably going to be communicating in multiple markets to multiple audiences on multiple platforms. And there may be different teams within the brand that are working on different things as well. And so the first thing is just understanding what available media you have. If there's an ad that's working really well in Latin America, how do I find that? But then culturalize it so it can work equally well in Russia. The Agile Creative Studio is both a means to sort of house and find and monitor existing media. It is a platform then to create briefs and produce really all of the ad creative that you would need, and that's literally from static images to video to augmented reality lenses for Snap and Facebook to television ads. We're literally making a television ad now for one of the world's largest marketers. And then once they're launched, it's a place where you can watch the creative data and build IP. And we really think of this as like a new kind of first party data, that you build IP around what are my brand's best creative practices, and what are the things that tend to work, and how do I use those to inform my future productions. So all of that happens within our technology platform. And ultimately what its promise should be is that if you sort of think about what's happened in the marketing world over the last probably maybe 5 years, is that really everyone saw that there were huge challenges associated with the sort of increasing complexity of marketing. And the response was, all right, well, I'm going to in-house. I'm going to bring, I'm going to move from my agency. I'm going to take the 300 people that were there and I'm going to now move them in-house. Well, that had some benefits. You brought the team closer to your brand. The data was owned within your house. You could maybe save some. but ultimately 300 people is still 300 people.
Yeah.
And so what we are doing is, all right, well, let's take the next logical step, the same step that's happened in literally every other industry. Is it what is the role of technology to actually make this system more efficient? And so what we would hope is that same company now, instead of having 300 people, could have 30 or 50, and that they're actually behaving like they're 300 or frankly far more. And all of that is powered on the Agile Creative Studio.
Incredibly cool. And I also believe that since founding the company in 2015, you've raised more than $45 million and count many of the world's leading brands and agencies as your clients. But can you provide maybe a use case just so anyone listening can understand how it would actually work in their world and the kind of value that it would offer?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so there's so many different use cases that we see, but one of the most common is a marketer decides that they want to communicate around some upcoming event or some product launch, whatever it is, and they need to get communications that are going to work on each of the platforms that their media buying operation is going to be focused on. So historically, what would happen is they would focus on the TV ad, and then very little thought would be given to all the digital assets.
Yeah.
And in a shocking number of our client use cases, that's actually still the way it works, even though now television might only account for 30% of the overall media spend. So 70% of the media spend is happening on platforms for which the assets were a total afterthought. And so oftentimes clients will come to us and say, hey, I have this television ad. Can you help me make media that's actually going to work on Facebook, on YouTube, on Instagram stories, et cetera? And so in those cases, it's really just taking some existing piece of media and transforming it into media that's going to work in these different platforms. So a lot of motion graphics, it's not just about format. It's really about like story re-architecture and understanding how different visual cues work in different places. Another frequent use case is a brand isn't sure what the appropriate message is going to be, and is looking to digital media as a way to experiment more broadly, and through the data actually learn about their customer. So we're actually just working in conjunction with a large agency on this for a very large CPG company, where they had 7 hypotheses on different reasons that people weren't using their product, and they worked with us to create an array of assets around each of those 7 hypotheses, and then put them out to a variety of different platforms. Look at the data depending upon to see how each of those were working with different audiences, and then use that to inform the eventual TV production. Wow. Down the road. So ultimately, I think the way we look at it is that we've built a platform for creative play, and that if you make the creative costs affordable enough, and you make the production times quick enough, like literally, a few days, not a few months, then you can actually like totally re-architect the way you use creativity. Yeah. And, creative can be the targeting vector, not necessarily audience. And that just opens up so much more scale, because creative is the major driver of performance. The way we sort of look at it is that you have thousands of companies that sort of make up the whole ad tech ecosystem.
Yeah.
Almost all of them are focused on using technology to adjust either budget or targeting levers. But those are the 2 small levers of performance. That Google uses a stat that creative is responsible for 70% of performance. But no one thinks of creative as a vector to apply technology and to optimize around. we're trying to change that.
And you did mention scale a few moments ago. And just for everyone listening, I've got to point out here that over the last 2 years alone, VidMob has seen its revenue grow by over 35 times. And I suspect it might be even more now with the current climate. But I also believe that you're currently the official creative partner of Facebook, Instagram, Google, YouTube, Snapchat, Twitter, Pinterest, and LinkedIn, and so many more. But the question I'd love to ask you is, what lessons have you learned on your journey, and what would you pass on to any startup founders listening? I'm sure you could write a book on that alone, but is there anything that really stands out?
Sure. So I think there's a few key things that I've learned, and yeah. I'll sort of caveat this a bit by saying that, I think every founder has to sort of follow their own journey, and there are things that work for me that wouldn't work for other people, and vice versa. For me, I think that finding a mission up front and building our company around that mission was one of the most important things we ever did. So, we started with this concept of, it was a very quantitative goal of trying to create 1 million jobs. And over time that evolved into what we now say is like evolving creativity for the better. And so how do we use technology to make creative perform better, to make it as a sort of a better experience for our clients, and for laborers that it be a better better jobs, et cetera. So there's all sorts of things that we do around that. We have, a variety of different diversity programs. I think last year, more than 55% of the new creators in our community qualified for some sort of diversity metric. One of the examples that I know, the creative industry as a whole has somewhere between 10 and 11% female creative directors, which is just insane. In our platform, it's over 50%. And so there's many things. We've also launched a foundation called VidMob Gives, which uses the platform to make a variety of free ads for many charities. And actually, during the whole coronavirus, we're actually working with Facebook and the CDC right now to create messages and help them sort of broadcast messages about public health. And there's other things we do there. But sort of building around a mission helped set the tone for the kind of people that were going to join the company, and ultimately gave, in my point of view, it gave us like a superpower where like we could attract people and lure them into working working with us on vectors that didn't just rely on salary, compensation, et cetera. And so that was like a huge thing. And I think that now just broadly, in this sort of new generation of people, purpose is a really big deal, and so getting right on that, and making sure that it's not just some bolt-on to your company, but it actually is like part of your company ethos, is a big deal. And then I think sort of part and parcel with that is like investing in culture. I think this is something that most founders get wrong. That like you think about, it's like a culture of execution, or it's a culture of growth, and ultimately those are important facets of what a business needs to do, but they're not going to build companies that last for years. And so we from the very beginning have really focused probably an inordinate amount on figuring out like what do we want our culture to be? How do we want the rest of the world to see us? And how do we embody that in the products that we build? And so, I think, and I hope this is true, is that we've built a sort of like a consistent, a sort of a sense of consistency through that all. And that when, one of our clients deals with us, they know exactly what they're going to get. They're going to get a company that has soul, a company that, has sort of purpose in why it's doing the things it's doing, and a company that cares and is going to treat them and whatever their need is, with the care that it deserves.
And like I said at the beginning of the podcast, it is a period of uncertainty at the moment, but I do know, having spent just 30 minutes with you, you are an incredibly positive guy, so the future is going to be optimistic. But what is next for VidMob? Where do you go from here, do you think?
Well, I think there is the now. So, while we're in the midst of, the global pandemic, and then there's the sort of broader future. Yeah. So, we're sitting here today on March 26th, and I feel like, that we're in this period of such massive and rapid information change that the days matter. Like the 26th is a very different epic than like March 12th. But my point of view is that I think that we're going to that pace of information will probably continue to be incredibly rapid for the next week or two. But then we're going to start to have a better sense of, the long-term economic impacts, the long-term, health impacts, and all of these things. And we're going to start to move back towards some sense of normalcy. It's not to say that we're going to be back living exactly the way we were within a few weeks, but I think we're going to have a sense for what the course is. Whereas today, I think we're still in a period of great uncertainty. So we today are very focused on what can we do to help. So one of the things we did was we opened up our platform and made it freely available to any agency, in-house team, or boutique that was sort of struggling with this new work from home model. We felt like that was an important thing for us to do as kind of a responsible member of the creative community. And a lot of our internal engineering focus right now is on sort of making that work from home product as easy as possible for in this new use case that we frankly didn't even contemplate like 2 weeks ago. In the bigger picture and sort of life back to normal, ultimately the way we sort of look at it is that the expertise and the particular skill that we have today as it relates to primarily walled garden social marketing, that ultimately what enables that is just that these platforms have powerful APIs that enable us to push ad media into their ad accounts and to learn about the performance as they go. Well, that's equally possible within the broader programmatic web and is increasingly possible in connected television and OTT systems. And so one of the initiatives for us this year is kind of connecting across that entire ecosystem, so that, as marketers think about their marketing across any digital channel, which is soon going to be every channel, that our system of using data to learn about and improve creative should apply, frankly, to all your marketing, whether that's social, programmatic, or television. And then the other major vector for us is just doubling, tripling, quadrupling down on these data systems. So, today we're particularly strong as it relates to, sort of the key performance indicators that are delivered back via the ads APIs. So, clicks, purchases, view-throughs, et cetera. We're building systems, and we'll be focusing on building systems that can do a better job of monitoring brand impact as well. So that this can be a useful tool, not just at the sort of media buyer level, but actually at the CMO level. So that the CMO has sort of a dashboard and a window into broader brand impact. And I think those things should keep us busy this year.
It sounds that way. I've loved having you on the podcast today. But before I do let you go, could I just ask that you remind everyone listening of where they can find VidMob online, and also contact your team if they are left with any questions after listening to our conversation today?
Yeah, of course. That's important information. So we can be found at vidmob.com. So that's vid as in video, and then mob, M-O-B. Sometimes people say I think it's M-O-D, but VidMob. And then, we're available as VidMob and, really all of the social platforms. And if they want to follow me, I'm at Collmerica. On Twitter especially, but elsewhere as well.
Excellent. It's almost like a superhero handle there. Well, I meant what I said a few moments ago. I've loved having you on here today, and especially because you're so optimistic, and we are living in a period of uncertainty at the moment. And when all this madness has cleared and the travel is back to normal, it'd be great to meet you in person, have a hot coffee or cold beer, whatever it is, and get you back on the podcast. But more than anything, stay safe, and thanks for joining me today.
Neil, thanks for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I do look forward to that beer.
Over the last 2 years alone, VidMob has seen its revenue grow by over 35 times. And they're currently the official creative partner of Facebook, Instagram, Google, YouTube, Snapchat, Twitter, Pinterest, and LinkedIn, among so many others. And their roster of clients includes global brands such as Bayer, Intercontinental Hotel Group, IKEA, Neutrogena, as well as disruptor brands like True & Co. and Acorns. And I'll be honest with you, before I spoke to Alex today, I didn't really know too much about them. And what really struck me was a company like VidMob here are right at the heart of some of the biggest brands and some of the biggest businesses and all the content that we consume around them. But if you take all those achievements and accolades away, you have Alex there, who for me came across as just a positive, optimistic and incredibly humble guy. So for that reason alone, he is on my cool guys to have a beer with in New York City once those airports open up again. And who knows when that will be. But Alex, if you do listen back to this interview, that is something that we will be doing, and I know we'll make that happen. So remember, gang, email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. Check out all the other episodes on my website over at techblogwriter.co.uk. And I will reply to each and every one of you if you've got any questions or anything you want to share. Just promise me you won't start the email with a sales pitch. Nobody wants to be that guy, right? But that's it. Class dismissed. I will see you all here back in the morning. So thanks for listening as always. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.